Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we bring expert-backed guidance to real parenting moments. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a former teacher and mom of six, here to help families cut through the noise and trust what they do know, their child, their gut, and their love. Today's guest is someone who helps parents see their kids and themselves with deeper compassion. I'm thrilled to welcome Gabriele Nicolet, a speech-language pathologist, certified parent coach, and the founder of Raising Orchid Kids. Gabriele works with families raising neurodivergent children, autistic, ADHD, anxious, and helps them understand what their child's behavior is really telling them. If you've ever wondered or ever found yourself thinking, this isn't the child I thought I'd be parenting, or wondering why does everything feel so hard, this is the episode for you. Gabriele, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Jessica.
Yes, well, I want to give our listeners a little bit of context for who you are. So can you tell us a little bit more about your journey? How did you go from speech language pathology to now parent coaching?
I trained and worked as a speech therapist, pediatric developmental speech therapist. So that what that means to me is birth to 5, so real littles, for 20 years. And then the pandemic happened.
Right.
And we went from being an exclusively in-person practice. At the time, I was managing a speech therapy practice with 10 clinicians, all in-home and in school, to on March 13th, 2020, we were in person. On March 16th, we opened as a fully virtual practice. And what became really clear very quickly is that there were some kids who could hang with the virtual format, but most of them couldn't. And what that meant was going back to basics and teaching parents how to be the therapist in the room. And that meant I needed some different tools. And so I went back and I got a coaching certification in 2021. And so that's the early intervention always comes with a side of parent coaching. But
Mm-hmm.
in many cases, what that parent coaching looks like is the therapist comes to your house, does cool things with your kid, and then leaves. And you're like, I can't remember what the therapist was doing. What this did, even though it was online, it was super, super effective. It made me a way better coach because I couldn't jump in and just do things. And so I had to figure out how to help parents figure out how to do the things I wanted them to do. And so that's really where that started. Since then, I have closed my speech therapy practice, mostly because it ran its course, and have reopened as a parent coaching practice exclusively.
Incredible. What a journey and testament too. Like, I'm thinking about early intervention services. Second son, when he was about 4 months old, he was diagnosed with failure to thrive. And I remember just being in those settings where they're like, oh yeah, this is what you do. And then when you are then tasked with doing it when at like 11 p.m. or 5 a.m. or you're like super tired or you have a 1-year-old like I had at the time, how do you remember how to do it all? And so I love this kind of angle too that you bring in, which is, equipping the parent with the skills that they need in order to then best support their child, because it doesn't necessarily happen between the 1 to 2 p.m. or the 5 to 6 p.m. in the midst of dinner, right? Like, we're talking about, this is like a lifelong sort of thing that you're helping build this foundation. So, you've supported families through schools, homes, clinics. What are some of those biggest lessons that you've learned with best supporting and equipping parents along the way?
I think it has to do with what you said. Therapy happens any moment of the day can be a therapeutic moment. And in fact, if we're only thinking about therapy as Tuesdays from 1 to 2 p.m., we have lost, somebody will do the math here, but a week's worth of time minus 1 hour to um, to implement strategies, right? And okay, part of that is going to be asleep, but even like we can do therapeutic strategies while we're brushing teeth. We can do therapeutic strategies while we read books. We can do therapeutic strategies while we tuck kids into bed. And if we're thinking about it that way, right, that life is practicing skills, then we're dialed all the way in and we can accomplish a lot more. And when I say accomplish a lot more, we can give a lot more of the inputs that a child might need so that that child can acquire those inputs and start really getting off to the races with them and using those new skills. And so I think that's part one. But I also think part two is there's a, particularly when we have complicated kids or neurodivergent kids or orchid kids, as we call them over at Raising Orchids, there's a process of reconfiguring our expectations of what that life, what that experience might look like. And here's what I don't mean by that. What I don't mean is we give up on all hopes and dreams and just say, well, they have this disorder and therefore their life is over. Not that. But there is a period of grief and mourning that happens when we realize our child may not have the experiences that we kind of pre-programmed for them in our minds. And being aware of that is number one. Like once we become aware of it, then we're like, oh, right. They might not do X, Y, Z. And they might, or it might look different. And so just coming to terms with, okay, who is this person that I brought home? What is it that they need? And how does that differ from what I thought they might need? And then being okay with that.
I want to take that, I think maybe one step further now, because I have a bunch of questions now that are coming to
Yeah.
mind, which is, realizing, like, slowing down enough in the moment to realize, like, oh, what are those expectations, or like what behavior is happening right now, and like how am I feeling about that, in addition to maybe the one step, which is like that connecting piece, is like, how is my child navigating this, or what are they feeling while they're exhibiting like this behavior. So as you've worked with families to better understand like what that behavior really is saying, can you walk us through like how you guide them, or what are some things that you say, or how can parents maybe be more reflective in that sense?
Yeah. This is it's first of all, it's simple but not easy.
Nothing good in
Okay.
life ever is, right? It
There you
sounds
go.
great. Practice is hard.
Yeah. So, but I think the first thing is, yeah, what's going on for your child? And when I approach that, I do it through a nervous system lens, which is so the question that I often ask is, what's happening in that nervous system that's causing this behavior? We got to look internal to make sense of what's happening externally. Behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. All behavior is communication about something. We can argue about whether that behavior is desirable, whether that mode of communication is effective. And usually, if it's happening over and over, it is effective in some way, maybe not desirable, right? Um, but all behavior is communication, and all behavior derives from an internal unmet need. Okay. But, and there's a kind of an over indexing in the parenting space right now, I think, on like, on this, which is like, my child has this massive unmet need. My child is a deeply feeling kid. My child is like sensitive. Yes. And then can we get parent in a space of, some people would call it seniority or empowerment, to lead that child through a difficult situation? This is a lot of the work that I do, which is like, parents come to me and they say, my child rules my house. And part of it is, and by the way, my child also has a disability. And so that's why I think they're ruling my house. But sometimes what we have to work on is the adult's sense of parenting power, which is, you're the CEO. And a good CEO runs their company, runs their family with a mix of leadership, encouragement, and teaching. And I would argue a bad CEO runs their company with a lot of control and fear, which are also on offer when we become parents, because lots of us were parented with control and fear. So it becomes this really interesting dance for me anyway, of like, what's happening for the child developmentally? We got to understand that. We absolutely must understand what's happening with kids at a nervous system level. But then the other piece of it is, what's happening for the adult's nervous system? How are they experiencing what's happening? I can give you an example. One of the families I work with right now is dealing with a lot of screaming in their family. So kids, right? And you know this, you have plenty of them. Some kids, they learn screaming's very effective. You can scream and almost always get a reaction. but I've got a parent who's got a lot of auditory sensitivities. And so every time her child screams, it puts her over the edge. And so she's coming to me and she's saying, I don't know what to do. I'm not able to hold it together in those moments. And so that's an area where we're really working on mom's nervous system, getting mom some tools for taking time out, putting her loop headphones, earbuds in when she knows this might happen, really kind of working on some beliefs about like, okay, what does it mean when your child is screaming? Well, it means I'm a terrible parent. Usually there's some kind of like, it means I'm a terrible parent when my child does this bad thing. Right. So we look at all of that.
The shame spiral. I think we've talked about that on like other podcasts too, of like, oh my gosh, any little thing, any mistake my child makes is a reflection of me as a human and as their parent, right? And which is like not happening. They're an individual. We're trying to help them, navigate what this is like too, while also
Yeah,
navigating ourselves.
absolutely. And it's so hard because society reinforces that,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm thinking too, like I saw something on social media the other day and it was talking about this game. Like I'm always looking for like hacks, tips, like all of the things, right? Like I've got a whole crew of kids. No matter wherever we go, people stop us and they're like, "Oh my goodness, like, oh, you have a beautiful family," or "Man, you got your hands full." Like I've heard all of the things, right? Like we just attract eyeballs because there's 6 children whenever we go somewhere. And our kids know that too. They're like, "Well, why did they talk to us?" And I'm like, "Well, they don't always see 6 kids together in public. Like that's just something that's unique about us." And I remember scrolling on social media and I wish that I knew who it was, but there was a mom and she's like, "Yeah, I started this game and we just call it the game." And she's like, the whole point of the game is for, since there's already going to be eyeballs on us, if we can get a compliment. But the thing isn't about like, "Oh, your family's so beautiful," or, "Oh, uh, your little one, she's so sweet, she's so cute," or something like that. Not looks. Like we're talking about behavior, right? Like, so the thing is that they can't know that we're playing the game. And so a compliment has to be behavior based and it's for the whole group. But if someone is like, climbing off the shelf or something, or climbing on the side of the cart, like, is that a way that we can win the game together? And so we talk about that a little bit before we go into the grocery store and do a restaurant. Like, oh yeah, we want to, see how if we can win the game with a compliment. And I think that kind of comes back to that like root sort of insecurity of like, oh my gosh, there is always eyeballs on our family. And, if one of my child's children is having like a fit or a tantrum at the restaurant, like, what does that say? Or what kind of perception do people have or instantly judge just because of the sheer number of kids, right? And in reality, though, then that also on the flip side, puts a lot of pressure on them to like perform in public. And so that's been one of my big struggles is that I have a kiddo, I told you my second son, and he has sensory sensitivities. And so sometimes if there's like background music at the restaurant or like someone drops a glass or a cup, or we're asking him, "Hey, what do you want for dinner?" And the waiter comes over before he can like articulate to us, like sometimes that sets him on edge and he'll like crawl under the table and need a break. And so it's also that balance, right? Of like, yes, I see you as an individual, we can understand what's happening, but also, we should be aware of others, whatever is reasonably and developmentally appropriate. Like my background is as a teacher. And so I'm thinking like, oh, I got 30 kids with me, my little classroom. And so I think that's a great perspective too, that you bring into that.
Yeah.
What are some of those patterns that you often see with families that are raising neurodivergent kids, or any like strategies or things that they could apply like both in the home and maybe outside if they're going to grocery store, restaurants, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, part of me loves your let's play the game example for kids who can handle it. Right? And that I think is the first thing. Like, who's your audience? Know your audience.
Yeah.
Know what time of day they are and are not capable of making it through the grocery store. Right?
Mhm.
When my child was 2, I had to go to the grocery store. Well, I thought I did anyway. And big meltdown. My cart was full of groceries. Big meltdown was happening. I lost my mind. I was like, wow, this is not going the way it needs to. I left a full cart of groceries, carted that child out to the car, and drove home. I stayed outwardly calm at the time, but I remember I was kind of like, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I had to get over and listen to me talking about it. Like, almost 20 years later. My fear of like leaving a full cart of groceries, like you don't do that, except that that was the need of the situation. So I think, what are the needs of the situation? What do you have to do? And then can you prepare? I mean, Jen and I over at Raising Orchid Kids, we are huge fans of antecedent interventions. What can you put into place before that will help you in the during? So a little story about, we're going to the store, we're sticking to the list. Child number 1, you're going to get to hold the list. Child number 2, you're going to get to cross things off the list. Child number 3, you're going to get to grab the cereal off the shelf. Child number 4, you know.
Yes. That sounds like my Truth or Sam's Club this weekend. It's like, okay, here we go. Who's going to show the card when we walk in the door? Who's going to hold the phone the whole time? Make sure. Like, oh my goodness.
And giving kids a job that they can reasonably handle is key. Like, everybody wants to feel useful. Everybody wants to feel included. Everyone wants to feel important. And so setting them up for success with, what are the expectations? What are we and are we not doing? And if you know you've had a problem with the lollipop at the checkout, in previous visits, you're going to remind people, and today is not a lollipop day. Maybe next time, right? Or we just don't get lollipops at the store because we've got 100 million lollipops at home. So whatever that is for you, right?
Yeah.
But it comes from this energy. And this is what I was talking about earlier about like the parenting empowerment piece or your sovereignty. That description, and I hear it in your voice too, because if you're a classroom teacher or the mom of 6 kids, you've got to have that energy intact, which is, we're going to make this good together. And I've got you. We cannot rely on children to got us. When we rely on other people's behavior, and the example of children is particularly salient, right? Like, when we rely on our children's behavior to make us feel powerful, we're in deep trouble.
I mean, that's a little scary when you like phrase it that way. I'm like, oh yeah, oh my goodness. Like, maybe I need to slow down and take a look in the mirror first, because there are moments, like just in general life where, you feel weak or tired or something, and you're like, oh my gosh, of course this is happening right now. Of course they would bring this up, like, you know.
Yeah,
What
it's
are why do you think
it's
it's so
real.
common, I guess, for parents to feel like they've done something wrong when their child might be struggling?
I think most people are parented with this mix of control and fear. If you don't be good, the fear is actually like that you'll get kicked out, right? Or that you won't receive love. I think it's a really basic survival instinct. And we're entering a time when child development is now an actual field, right? Brain research is showing us these mechanisms that we were previously aware of. And so I think there was a time when people were living in family groups, right? Where you had multiple generations, and you had real customs and you had ways of raising children that maybe were more collaborative. I don't know that they were better informed, but there were certainly more resources. And when you have better resourced parents, you've got more relaxed parents, you've got better outcomes. Now we're like hyper, individualized. And so there isn't that parenting culture. There's a lot of it on the internet. You can find kind of whatever you want.
It's very out
But
there.
now, what's that?
I said it's very out there. It's like
It's
anywhere
very
you
out there.
turn and look, if you're a parent, you're bombarded with something, right?
Yeah. But now we have all this research. And so there is, I think, an increase in like consciousness generally around like, okay, what kind of parent do I want to be? And certainly if you're listening to a podcast like this one, you're thinking about, what kind of parent do I want to be? But I think, again, most of us were raised with this mix of do as I say, because I'm going to keep you safe and you need to be good. And that's hard to unwind without a lot of effort and thought and, sometimes coaching and therapy.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Oh my goodness. Well, I want to talk to you about like your approach, because you did shift from, practitioner, therapist, speech pathology with kids, and now you're doing parent coaching and family coaching. What is like the grounded foundational sort of approach that you have to helping parents feel more confident and less reactive?
Yeah.
in those situations?
Um, I'll just go all the way to the mind bender, which is your child is not the thing that's making you feel bad about your parenting. um, that's not an outside thing, that's an inside job. And so a lot of what I work on with parents is having them recognize their own parenting power, number one, but then also like, what are the voices? Who are the voices inside their head that are telling them they're not enough, they're not good enough, they're not doing this well enough, they don't know what they're doing, somebody else would do it better. It's often your mother,
Start there first, maybe. Oh my
right?
gosh.
So, or your mother-in-law, there's often some kind of maternal figure, and so just kind of uncoupling those voices from the ability to listen to your intuition and your gut about what your kid needs. And this is the other thing that I hear a lot from the parents that I work with is they've gone to doctors or therapists or, people who are very well intended, some of whom are highly educated, but are giving them bad advice. And it's bad advice because it doesn't resonate for the parent and it's not fun for the child. And we can argue about like, well, are kids supposed to have fun all the time? But um, when we are introducing interventions particularly for very young children, we know kids learn through play. It has to be fun for them. And so I often have people who are coming to me saying, my kid has this therapy, they hate going. I'm like, take them out. And the parent comes to me because they want to take them out, but they feel like they don't have permission. I write a lot of permission slips in my practice. Permission to go with your gut, permission to not send your kid to camp because you think they're not ready, permission to send your kid to camp because you think they're ready. Lots of permission slips.
I What an interesting perspective too, and I feel like that's super eye-opening, right? Is like somehow we've just dampened our own ability to make decisions based on either traditional patterns or society pressure or these other voices that are floating around or something we saw on social media. Like, oh my goodness, permission slips as a parent. Um, I might have to like start doing that, like maybe writing on sticky notes or something just to like remind myself, like, oh, this is okay. You can be in this zone and you can make this decision.
You can. And also, by the way, the biggest permission slip is you're allowed to think you're an amazing parent, even if you don't do everything, in air quotes, correctly. You are allowed. And guess what? You're the best parent for your child. How do I know? Because you already are.
I think we should just end the episode there. Like, what a lasting thought. Like, we don't need to say anything else. The episode is concluded. Thank you so much for your time. No, I'm just kidding. But like, truthfully, like that's what we're seeking, right? Like as parents, we just want that validation of like, oh, I'm not messing my kids up. Right? Like, whoa.
Yeah,
um,
but we do it the wrong way, right? We do it from the
right.
outside. We do it by
Yeah.
looking at their behavior for confirmation. Then we're like, did I do it right? Did I do it right? Instead of from the inside out, I am the best parent for my child. I am doing my best. I am a work in progress. I forgive myself for my mistakes and I extend grace and compassion to both me and my child. Again, simple, but not easy, right?
Yeah, simple but not easy. Oh my goodness. Well, we all have something now at the top of our to-do list from this episode, but I want to talk a little bit more about well, I guess like we kind of already replicated like the message that you would want to share, but I want to go a little bit further with the kiddos that are neurodivergent, and because you specifically serve this population of parents that are kind of navigating these additional trials along with their children. So um, you often say parents come to you thinking that, this isn't the child I expected, or, why is this so hard? So, can you tell us a little bit more about why this realization in and of itself is so hard and why it's important for us to maybe take a step back and see them as the whole individual? Or, like, what is that process of, you know, I get the diagnosis and now what?
Yeah. There's a misconception sometimes that happens, which is when I get a diagnosis. Now that I have a diagnosis, the feeling is somehow now I have a different child. And that's actually not true. Right. And so I think that's the first part of the question is like, okay, so your child has this diagnosis that confers some advantages in terms of what services they get, whether those services are covered, what general direction we're looking in for, like what kinds of services or what kinds of help this kid might need. But it doesn't really tell you anything about your child specifically. And that's where you are the total expert, right? You've been living with this person since they were born, since before they were born, really. And you have insight and you have knowledge and you have gut feelings about your child. And when we can peel back the layers that say we can't have that knowledge, we come, it's a beautiful process actually, because when parents get out of their own way, and there's all this like, belief systems and thinking patterns and social media and like all this fuzz, it's like static on the line of the connection between you and your child, which is, I know that when my child looks to the right, that they are thinking about their special toy over there. And I get it for them, right? Like there's a level of dialed inness that parents have that they sometimes aren't aware that they have, and sometimes they're fighting actively against it because the therapist said, well, when they look over there, you should make them ask for the toy. And there's value in that. And I would say not every time and not if it feels bad to you. So again, another permission slip, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it is, and as somebody, so my daughter, when she was very young, had a sensory processing disorder. And my husband and I were talking about this last night. I was devastated. And I went through a lot of grief because I was afraid she wouldn't walk. I was afraid she wouldn't have friends. I was afraid she wouldn't be on a team or do things that required her to be kind of out in the world because she was so, at the time, very sensitive and fretful. And we did take her to early intervention, and she's the poster child for early intervention because she, has come into herself. But that process of grieving, like I would cry after every therapy appointment, and I do this for a living. I tell parents it's going to be fine for a living, and I
Mhm.
still had to go through that, my own process. And so I think the other part of what I do with parents is really honor what they're feeling and allow them to express it in a safe container where the only job we have at particular moments of coaching sessions is to just feel an emotion, identify it, let it vibrate through us, and then be like, wow, that was unpleasant, but I'm still alive.
I love that you mentioned like processing through it too and like giving that space to actually feel and embrace the emotions because I'll speak from my own experience with this, but when my second son was 4 months old, I also had a 16-month-old. My oldest two boys are only 12 months apart. And so when we were getting all of the diagnoses and like the therapists and all of the specialists and things for him, I was also in that mindset of like, okay, well, this was atypical from my 16-month-old. And so like I'm constantly comparing them. Like I have two boys, like this is not right, this is not normal, something must be wrong. And so sometimes it, for me at least, it felt like it was in my face of like, oh my gosh, this is going to impact him forever because he's not keeping up with where his big brother was just a few months ago, you know? And so, he's thriving now and he's on the other side of things, but it feels so incredibly isolating when all you're hearing is like the medical jargon or here's the therapy protocols. And you're like, okay, I have to do it by the book because they're going to ask me by the book, did this work? Did this not work? Because they're tracking their data. But then at the same time, you lose that connectivity, which is that you are their parent. What is that nuance, right? Like as you were describing that, I was thinking back to, well, and also right now, but I have a 2-year old. And so she like babbles and she has her little toddler speak and we'll get on the phone and she'll like talk to Papa, right? And he's like, what did she say? And it's like, oh, she said blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I would have never caught that. And I was like, oh yeah, she says it all the time. But it's like that much in tune, right? Like they look over and you know what they're looking at or what they want. Um, And so that's also like that hopeful piece of like, oh yeah, I've got this, right? Like that you should give yourself a pat on the back if you can understand your 2-year-old talk, because that means they're talking to you enough for you to like you're a safe person for them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
And I love what you said just now about connection. And it's actually what we maybe should have started with, which is your connection to your child is the most important teaching tool you have, because when we signal to kids that they don't have to do anything to be seen as marvelous, marvelous humans in our eyes, right? That's the connection part. It's like, I love you just as you are. Liz Gilbert has a great saying: I love you just as you are, and far too much to let you stay that way.
I like that. That seems very relevant.
Right? It's fair. But if we stick with the first part, right? Because we do the second part pretty well, but we forget about the first part a lot, which is, you are incredible. Most of the time, right? In many cases, I made you from nothing. First of all, oh my God. Second of all,
Amen.
here you are in all of your you-ness. And it's me who gets to be your mother or your father or your caregiver. That's amazing. Can you stay with the amazing? And then, yeah, all the hard stuff too. It's 3 a.m. Somebody needs a diaper. Somebody's got reflux. It's terrible. They don't walk. They all the things. Fine. But can you stay with the miracle for just a little bit longer with that connection, and signal to your child that unconditional love? That's like, yeah, gives me goosebumps.
I'm getting goosebumps and maybe a little couple tears that are coming. I mean, that is the struggle, right? Like that is the pressures of life, that in those moments where it feels like everything is crumbling because it's 2 a.m. and you're exhausted and you have a work meeting in the morning and your 4-month-old won't sleep, they got a regression going on. And it's like, oh my gosh, I just want to sleep, right? Like this does not feel like a blessing right now, in this moment. And so, um, actually, based on a couple of the episodes that we've had in the podcast already, one of the strategies that one of our guests had shared was kind of rewriting this narrative, or like getting into the habit of saying things differently than how we perceive. And so one of the things that I've been practicing, and I've been doing my homework, right? Like that's one of the things from the podcast that we've talked about too, but it's like reframing it to be like, oh man, I am so lucky. I am so lucky, right? Like there are thousands, millions probably of people that, wish for children. And like, man, how lucky am I? I have 6. Like, even in those moments that are so tough, how lucky am I that I get to wake up at 2 a.m. and see their sweet little face, or like soothe them back to sleep. Like, oh man, my arms, my heart, my everything is so full.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and
Yeah.
it does, because then I feel like I'm catching myself more often of being like, oh yeah, no, this is great. Like, I'm so glad that we have laundry on the floor. I'm so glad that we have dishes in the sink, because that means we had some healthy lunch or a great family dinner.
It
Um,
makes a huge difference how we talk to each other about, how we talk to ourselves about our children and our role makes a huge difference. I can't even tell you the number of times, to your point about like modifying your language. Um, I have a parent who comes and says, well, I have to take care of my kids. And I say to them, actually, you don't. You do not have to take care of your children. Well, but if I didn't, Child Protective Services would come and get them. That's true. But in that dichotomy, right? In the preferring that Child Protective Services not come for your children, you are making a choice for your children. Now, do you see that you choose to take care of your children? And sometimes, like, that's a big shift for people, right? Like,
that's a huge win. Like, you're still showing up for your kids. Like, okay, it's hard.
huge.
Like, you're there. You're here with your coach trying to be better for them. Like, okay, sign up. Let's give you a round of applause. Like, you're showing up. You're an awesome mom.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh,
But it's
I
hard. And I'm
love
not
this.
going
This
to,
is all in the
yeah.
feels.
Love.
Well, I do want to take a quick minute and ask a couple questions that were actually written in from our Launch Family community to our AI parenting assistant named Emmy. So these are like real questions from real families. And since we have a real expert with us today, I would love to get your perspective. So the first question is, my child doesn't have a diagnosis, but something feels off. What should I do first?
I love this question. Wow. Okay. You should keep asking people and keep telling people until you find a person to say, let's take a look. And that person could be a child development specialist, could be a developmental speech language pathologist, could be a developmental occupational therapist, could be a child psychologist, or you know what, better a social worker, honestly, like a play therapist who's a social worker. Somebody who's got broad child development expertise. This is not your pediatrician. Okay, your pediatrician's job is to keep your child's body alive, not to maximize their potential. And I love pediatricians. They're hugely important. It's not their role to suss out developmental issues. They're not very good at it, by and large, unless it's very obvious what the diagnosis is. So I would say keep asking the question. Also, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
We'll make sure we give the links to all of the ways to connect with Gabrielle in the show notes as well for you that are listening in, those of you that are listening in. I would you want to ask one more question too. So oh gosh, on another episode, we had talked about one mom's journey to kind of get the diagnosis, and she brought up developmental pediatrician. Would that be something to also potentially look for?
Yes, a developmental pediatrician is a great resource if you can find one. They are
Yeah, that's
very
what she
rare.
mentioned. It's very hard to find. So, okay. Well, the next question is, my kids' tantrums seem way more intense than other kids. Am I missing something?
No, in fact, you're picking up on something. Meltdowns that are very intense or very long or very frequent are a signal that your child's nervous system is very sensitive and is calibrated kind of possibly in a negative spiral. And that doesn't mean that there's a diagnosis, although certainly long and frequent and intense meltdowns are a hallmark of some developmental conditions. Um, no, what it means is that your child's nervous system is overloaded, and you can use strategies to decrease that overload to help those meltdowns either get less frequent or less intense. And that child might need more frequent or more repetition before those meltdowns are going to come under their control. And depending on the age of the child, like we're really talking about like later childhood for some kids. Like, you know, there's a teen with autism who I follow on Instagram who's 17 years old. He's just learning how to control his meltdowns. So this is, children as young as 8 can start to like do that by themselves, but it's a process.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a great perspective too. I mean, I taught kinder through second grade. And so I'm thinking about like our calm down corner and like emotion regulation. Like we were talking about it a whole heck of a lot at that age, because realistically, like third grade, I feel like was the cutoff for in our school where it's like, okay, they're independent. They're able to manage things on their own. Like I knew the stakes were high for testing and things too. So that does make sense as far as like a kind of cutoff for, like when to kind of consider, okay, maybe there might need some additional supports needed. The last question from the audience, is getting my child evaluated feels overwhelming. So where do I start? Like, do you have any roadmap for parents that are just starting to explore assessments, or like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Think, slow and steady. Don't do more than you can. Just take it one phone call at a time. There are waiting lists in lots of places. So get on a wait list. You can always cancel. And then, call someone else the next day or the next week or whatever feels okay for you. You're allowed to honor your own nervous system while you seek out more information.
Yeah, I love that perspective too. I think that kind of comes back to like the first question, which was, where do I go if I suspect that something might be off? So maybe asking for that referral to go see a specialist, maybe asking your child's teacher, see if there's any resources available through the school. That was a huge one when I was a teacher. I was like, hey, make sure you go ask these questions to the school counselor, the school psychologist, and like maybe they can get you on the right track or connect you with the people in the communities. Also coming back to your point of just like asking more people, talking about it with more people and see who they can connect you with.
Yeah,
Um,
the mommy Facebook groups I find are very helpful for referrals like that.
that's great too.
You can go in anonymously, you can post whatever the needs of your child are in your local community. You'll get lots of resources, in my
Love that.
experience.
I've definitely utilized that one too. So great minds think alike. Any lasting thoughts for parents that are listening in right now?
Just think, trust your gut. I mean, I love that question. I think something's wrong and I'm not sure what to do. If that feeling doesn't go away, and if it's there to tell you something. And it's not always that your child needs a diagnosis. Maybe it's something that you need to go work on. That's fine. But that feeling, we discount our body feelings too much. So listening to those, honoring those, being curious about those, and then seeing where it leads. It's not, not everything is a disaster. It's fine.
If you recenter yourself, co-regulation. I know we've talked about that on a couple episodes too. So we've got our homework, and I think we've got that lasting message too that you had mentioned earlier about believing and trusting in yourself, and even showing up and having that intention to do better for them is a huge win as well. Well, Gabrielle, I just want to thank you for being here and for helping us kind of reframe behavior, not as something to fix, but as something to understand. The work that you do reminds us that our kids don't need perfect parents. They need curious and compassionate ones, right? We talked about that connection today. To our listeners, if you're parenting a child who doesn't fit the mold and you're feeling lost, no, you're not failing. You're finding your way. Check the show notes for links to Gabrielle's coaching classes in the Raising Orchid Kids community. Until next time, remember that understanding is the first step to connection, and you're never in this alone.